Anissa Hudak, welcome to the Rehab podcast and the YouTube broadcast also. And it's really great to have you here. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me here today. Thanks.
Thank you. And just to let the audience know, we've done this before. We already spent an hour talking together, and unfortunately, it was my fault. My technology didn't work. Things broke down. We lost the audio. So now we're back again, and we're going to repeat our great conversation and talk about even more great stuff. So you're a Reiki master. I see it on your website. Can we talk about Reiki a little bit? Tell me how it works, how you perform it, how it helps people in pain, and with whatever it can help with.
Sure. Reiki is a Japanese healing touch therapy. You can touch people, or you don't have to. You can just hover. You're working in the bioenergetic field of the body. And so let's say if you were able to take your hands and start pulling them closer together, and you're going to get to a point where you feel the other hand, but you're not touching yet. It's in that energetic field that you are working in.
Oh, yeah.
You can feel your fingers and your hand, but you're not touching it yet. So that's kind of where we're working. With Reiki, it's just about creating a sacred space for that person to do whatever kind of healing they need to do. And it's about their higher self, their subconscious. So it's not like I'm going to, take energy from your feet and move it up to your head or anything. I'm really not in control of that. It is about just providing the sacred, safe space for you and your higher self to do whatever self-healing needs to happen. Now, you could say, you could get on the table and say, oh, my knee really hurts. And, I could spend a lot of time kind of hovering around your knee and working on that. But your higher self is going to take that energy and put it towards anything that it really needs, it sees fit to heal. And so it could be something else, and you could get up and say, gosh, my knee still hurts. Well, that could very well be. But your higher self took that energy and put it towards something else that really felt like it needed to heal more. So I'm not really in control of it. I just create the sacred space. Your higher self takes it from there. Now, that being said, usually people kind of go into a place where they're not quite asleep and they're not quite awake. And that's really where that self-healing happens. I've had people talk the entire time. I've had people sleep the entire time. Either way, it's all good. You're getting whatever it is your higher self needed during that time. I've had people cry on my table, scream, laugh, talk, everything, you name it. Again, it's whatever they needed to do. And it's a beautiful, most people say they feel warmth. Some people say they feel cold. My hands are cold, or the energy is cold. And it's really whatever their body needs in that moment. The energy provides for them. But generally, most people say my hands are very warm. And that's the Reiki flowing.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. And just the idea of having something, a therapy that you can provide that's kind of hands-on, but not like no touching involved. I know there a lot of people they don't want to be touched. They're uncomfortable with it. Mm-hmm. Or even there's people with fibromyalgia that are very sensitive to touch and they really can't be touched. And so that's really good to have something where you can come very close and actually provide or help with a healing energy and not actually have to put your hands on.
For me personally, I feel like my hands-on touch is better. I'm able to kind of sense things a little bit better within the body. But if someone says to me, I'd rather you not touch me, I won't touch them. That's easy. And I can just hover in that area and kind of go from there.
Yeah. So you still have the option to do it either way. Well, that's really good. Wow. So that's a great option for people. So are you actually like helping to free up energy blockages? Is that an issue with a lot of people where you have energy flowing? Now, what about chakras, like centers of energy in people? Can you talk about that? I mean, that's something that's really interesting.
So chakras are, obviously it's Eastern medicine word, if you will. And what it means is it's energy bundles, it's nerve bundles. Here in the West, we would call them nerve bundles, and they absolutely exist within the body. You can find them if, you take an anatomy class, you will be able to find these nerve bundles. They correspond with the chakras. We have 7 main chakras in the body, but actually we have over 240. But there's 7 main chakras that we work with. And I do work with the chakras. I can. I have a pendulum. I can see if they're blocked, if they're moving the right ways, that kind of thing. Can I help unblock them? Absolutely. I know how to do that. I actually use essential oils to help me with that. And so I use that in conjunction with the Reiki. I use the essential oils to help unblock the chakras.
Oh, wow.
But also too, with using the Reiki, I do use, I apply the Reiki to certain chakras, especially at the feet and at the head, and also in the hands. I really like to make sure that I hit those 3 main areas, those 3 main chakras with Reiki.
Okay. Oh, that's okay. And I've seen there's actually a place right across the street from us. They do, I think they do sound therapy. They have a whole room dedicated to sound therapy. They have like these bowls that generate different frequencies and tuning forks. And from what they told me about it, it's all related to freeing up blockages of energy in the body.
Yes, I have a friend who does tuning forks, and I have to tell you, it's absolutely amazing. She actually was able to blow out my 3rd eye chakra. It was beautiful. It was amazing. It was just a wonderful experience. The singing bowls, I have a singing bowl, but I have heard of, and I've seen the singing bowl therapy where they actually put the singing bowls on your body, and the different tones of the bowls actually create a different vibration for each chakra, and it helps to clear out the chakras and energy. I haven't had it done. I've seen it. I think it's pretty cool. So if you ever get the chance to really take part in that, I would do that. Okay.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah. And that's great. Now that you're telling me that, I should go over there and make an appointment for myself. So yeah, I found it interesting because I just love everything to do with sound. I love electronic music and recording and playing with sound. And another thing, and this was a topic of conversation yesterday, we were talking about binaural beats and the how you can use these sound programs where you put on headphones and you have different tones in each ear, and your brain perceives a beat frequency between those 2 tones. And we're actually talking about the theta range of brain waves. I think it's between like 4 and 7 hertz, and in that range, it can bring you into that half awake, half sleep state where you kind of, I mean, for me, I start to hear like really vivid voices, and and I feel like it stimulates creativity, and it's really kind of a great state to be in. Maybe right before you fall asleep, or just if you're meditating or relaxing.
And it's also a great place to do it's a great place to do your self-healing. That's kind of that area where you can do that self-healing.
Yeah, and I think that's what you're talking about with Reiki, that you can actually induce that state in a similar way. Mm-hmm. So, and in an audiobook I was listening to, they were actually talking about achieving different brain states using biofeedback. And this was really interesting. It kind of came out of nowhere in this audiobook. The author was talking about how they were told that forgiveness was actually the key to reaching certain brain states of actually forgiving people in your life, and which is unusual. He said he actually found that he had to go around forgiving everybody, and people that he thought were unforgivable, finding a way to forgive them. And forgiveness was the key to maintaining what they were talking about, an alpha state. But that was kind of an interesting thing, because I think about, like, I don't know if I could forgive everybody for everything. And it's just kind of an unusual thing, forgiveness. And I know gratitude is important, but.
Did it discuss forgiving yourself?
I would think that would be probably the primary thing, forgiving yourself, self-love, self-forgiveness. So, yeah, but I can't remember the name of the author. It was this guy, he founded a company, Mind Valley, and I downloaded his audiobook and was listening to it, and that part kind of came out of nowhere. But anyway, sorry, I see this thing coming up. Somebody's has an issue with their pharmacy. Anyway, so I'll get to that in a minute. I wasn't counting on working today, being the holiday. I was actually going to take off, and I know I'm being Jewish, I shouldn't even be using my technology, but I'm not that observant, really. Okay. Anyway, yeah. So as far as yoga, now in our previous conversation, we talked about the psoas muscle, which, I found really interesting. And now I'd read about another form of, I don't know if it's meditation. Yeah, I think it's a form of meditation where they focus on the base of the spine, that I guess all of the energy and maybe the problems that a person has, they kind of get all concentrated and bundled up at the base of the spine, and you're supposed to focus on that area and try to release it. But now you were talking about it in yoga, that it's the psoas muscle. Can you tell me, where is the psoas located, and how does that relate to tension and storing up negative energy or problems that people have?
Okay, so in addition to being a Reiki master, I'm also a yoga therapist, and I work with those specifically who have problems with PTSD, TBIs, traumatic brain injuries, and other trauma-related issues. So anxiety, depression, insomnia. You get the gist. All of that kind of stuff. I work primarily with the psoas muscle. Now, that being said, you're going to get a full body workout in one of my classes. And the reason for that is because we have what we call the psoas trail. Now, the psoas, in my humble opinion, it is the most important muscle of the body. And that's because it is, well, have you ever been ill or been in an accident and your body has curled itself up into the fetal position? If you have, that is the psoas muscle. And it protects all of your internal organs here in the front. And so without that muscle, you would have been left totally exposed and possibly, as far as cavemen were concerned, you could have died, right? So that psoas muscle is absolutely paramount. Now, the other thing that psoas muscle does is it's the emotional warehouse of the body. And so all of your happiness, your joy, your frustration, your anger, your grief, everything is contained and held in this muscle. You might also know this muscle as its other name, the hip flexor. Now, the hip flexor is the deepest muscle of the body. So it's really hard to kind of get to, which is why we work the trail. And the trail starts behind the knee and it goes into the inner thighs. From there, it's the actual hip flexor, the psoas. From there, it juts into the back and it goes all the way up the spine to where the spine meets the skull. And this is why you're going to get a full body workout, in our yoga class, because we have to kind of warm up the whole trail so we can get really deep into that psoas. Yeah. What we want to do is we want to exhaust the psoas as much as we can. And by doing that, it offers little releases. And so people sometimes say, gosh, my thighs are jiggling and I'm not moving. How come my thighs are like jelly and why am I spasming? That's great. We want that. Sometimes people don't even feel it happening, and that's okay too. There's no rhyme or reason. We just want to really work it. Those little releases release all kinds of emotional baggage that you don't have to carry. And by doing that, it frees up room so you can then tackle new things that are going to be coming up in your life, because as we know, we lead very stressful lives. And so it kind of gives you more room to be able to hold that stress. And so that, in a nutshell, is our psoas muscle. Well,
okay. And now another thing that you've started this program, Trauma Healing Yoga. And you've in the past provided, as you said, treatment to people with PTSD, and I see you also talk about especially having that you help to empower women, and I know a lot of women have had trauma. You say in your website 1 in 4 have had maybe not sexual abuse, but some kind of sexually related trauma, and it seems like it could even be higher than that. I mean, I think it's something that a lot of women go through, and especially, I deal with treating addiction, and women in recovery, and we had talked about this previously, don't always have a good person to turn to, as far as there's not a lot of women in the recovery meetings and people to sponsor them, and it is recommended that men go with men and women go with women as far as getting help in recovery. Now, do you provide any kind of like coaching or counseling or yoga therapy treatment that like women from anywhere in the country could reach out to you and get help or talk to you?
Absolutely, I do. I have a program. It's called the SAS Community, and that is for sexually assaulted and abused survivors It is all women. I am a 2-time rape survivor, and so I walk the walk every day. I understand. I've done it. I live it. Sometimes I revisit it, just like everybody else. And so I've created a community where women can kind of come together. You know, we know that community is very important when it comes to addiction recovery, any kind of recovery, quite frankly. I mean, look at Weight Watchers. You have AA and NA, and all of these groups have communities. And I realized that for women like me, we didn't have a community. In fact, it's kind of encouraged not to talk about it. Nobody wants to be uncomfortable. Well, you know what? Quite frankly, I'm not ashamed. I have no reason to be ashamed. I have no reason to be embarrassed. Shouldn't I be allowed to talk about it? If I had cancer, I would be allowed to, right? So I should be allowed to talk amongst my peers and get, you know, support. And I'm sure there's another woman out there who's been in my situation, and it would be nice to get her feedback. We need a community. And so that's what I've created. Not only will they get that kind of community, but also 24/7 access to recorded yoga therapy with me. And that's because, you know, at 3 o'clock in the morning, when nobody's really up and you're walking the halls of your house, you could, you know, get on your computer and take advantage of that and maybe help yourself go back to sleep or work out whatever it is that's on your mind that's pressing. You know, we don't get to choose when our PTSD kind of flares up and when we need help. And so that way there's always 24/7 access to a class. And there's going to be other things in there, yoga nidra, meditations, all kinds of other healing modalities, because healing is not a one-size-fits-all kind of a thing. And I'm sure you've encountered that with your addiction recovery. Just because it works for someone doesn't mean it works for someone else. People need options. And just because something doesn't work right now doesn't mean it's not going to work for them in 6 months or a year or 18 months, because there'll be a different person then. And they've come through a little bit more of their recovery at that point, and maybe they need to try whatever it is again, because it's different for them at that point. So you need to be retesting things, retrying things, and have other things that are, you know, other than meds and talk therapy, because there's more to recovery than that.
Yeah.
So that's what I've created.
Okay, and that's great. Now, in your blog, you've talked about triggers being an important thing, and we had discussed that as far as, you know, someone who's addicted, you know, they may be doing great in recovery, and they stop having the cravings, they feel great, and they're walking down the street, and something they see, maybe they see a street corner, or a smell or a sound, something brings them. Something brings them back to, you know, something triggers them. They're triggered back into that state of mind, and they start craving again. They start thinking about it again. They maybe feel terrible about themselves. And I know that that's in other kinds of trauma also, PTSD and any kind of life trauma, that you might have something that triggers you back into a negative state again. And, you know, how are some ways that people can deal with those kind of triggers?
I am of the thought process that triggers are actually really good things. Now, they don't feel great when you're going through them. Let's be honest. They're not fun. But they're leaving breadcrumbs for you. They are leaving a trail so you know where to go next with your therapy. And so maybe you need to take that trigger and either go right to a meeting if that's what you're doing. Maybe you need to go see your talk therapist and say, I've had this trigger, and you need to unpackage it, because it's giving you the path of where to go next with your therapies. So sucks going through them. They're not pleasant, but they're actually helping you. And if you can turn it around and look at it as, okay, this is helping me, I need to unpackage this next, then you can use it to your advantage.
Yeah, and that's great. And you, in going through the different kinds of therapy with yoga and meditation, will that help people to deal better with triggers?
It can very well. I talk with people as when you're going through a trigger, what can you do in that moment to kind of help keep you present? Because, a trigger wants to take you back to that place. And how can we remain present? And that's really the key. For me personally, when I was triggered, I had a trigger back in January, and it was intense. For me, I was able to go to my therapist. I unpackaged it with him, and we actually did EMDR around it. And that was really wonderful for me. It may not work for everyone. And just, I don't know if everyone knows this, but with EMDR, different therapists do it differently. And so if you're working with someone and the way they're doing it doesn't seem to work for you, maybe you need to try a different therapist, because they're going to do it a little differently, and that might work for you. I found out, and I was kind of like, wow, I didn't realize that. So just because you say, oh, I tried that once, it didn't work, try it with somebody else, because everybody does it a little differently. But for me, that worked. Of course, meditation, yoga nidra, and I use the 5 senses to help keep people present. And that seems to sometimes work.
Okay. Do you also do one-on-one coaching with people? If someone wants to just talk to you and work with you directly, even if they're not in your area, can someone reach out to you and have a session just one-on-one?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we would do it just like this on Zoom.
Yeah. Yeah, this is incredible. I mean, it's incredible technology. And this is relatively new for me, doing video discussions with people. I've been historically audio, but yeah, it's great to, and I know my camera is off a little bit to the side here. So if it looks like in the final video, if I'm not looking right at you, I'm actually making eye contact with you. But I know my camera is off this way a little bit. Okay, so yeah, so anyway, Anissa Hudak, thank you for joining me today on the Rehab Podcast. We're going to be broadcasting this on the Mental Health News Radio Network audio podcast, and also on YouTube. And I hope people will watch it on YouTube. You look great on camera, and I hope that they will. Thank you. I hope that they will reach out to you and learn more about your program, which is they can find you at www.traumahealingyoga.com.
That's me. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciated being on with you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's been great having you on, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.